So after Friday's preseason performance against the Cincinnati Bengals, it seems to me that Sean Clifford has really locked in that role as the backup QB to Jordan Love in Green Bay. And I thought the past couple months, just because the Packers did spend a fifth round draft pick on Sean Clifford and they didn't really have to invest any kind of draft capital in a guy like Alex Magoo, who they signed from the USFL, as well as Danny Etling, who they also released recently. It seemed like Clifford would likely be the guy just because of that draft capital, because of that investment. And after watching that preseason game, I think that he has sort of solidified himself in that role. And I already gave some thoughts on Friday's post preseason game video on Sean Clifford. And I think the main takeaway for me was that he looks like he has a lot the Packers can sort of mold into a solid backup quarterback in the NFL. Of course, he threw 2 interceptions, both of which happened in the second quarter, which clearly cannot happen. If you're throwing 2 picks in a quarter, it's going to be tough for your team to win. But I think we really saw that fearlessness, that Brett Favre-like ability of Sean Clifford. And when I say that he reminds me of Brett Favre, I'm not saying that I believe he is as talented as Favre or is going to have a career like Favre. It's just his play style. When you're looking at kind of quarterbacks, he plays more similarly to Brett Favre. And that's sort of like that carefree kind of, I'm just going to throw it up and believe kind of mindset with which Brett Favre definitely exemplified. His willingness to just go up there and making throws he probably had no business throwing. Lots of times ended in picks. Other times ended very nicely and the Packers score a touchdown. So clearly when you have a guy who's willing to take those risks and throw the ball into incredibly tight windows, sometimes they're going to get picked off, and that's what happened with Sean Clifford. And if you remove those picks, which is a big if because clearly interceptions are no good, but if you did remove those 2 plays, the rest of the game, Clifford looked lights out. He played really, really well, 20 completions out of 26 attempts, a little over 200 passing yards. And so I think when you look at Clifford, one interesting note is that he is older than Jordan Love by 4 months because he was redshirted back in 2017 with Penn State, was the backup in 2018, then he starts 2019 through 2022. And by the time he comes into the draft, he was already, 24 years old, turned 25 in July. And so it is funny that he does have more experience than Love. I believe he has 51 college starts versus Love's like 38 or so games, something like that. But the thing is with him, he is a young quarterback and he was a 5th round draft pick. So typically, you're not expecting these late round guys to come in and be starters in the league. Their chances and it's likely that they'll end up as backup quarterbacks in the league. And so I think drafting Sean Clifford for the Packers was in the idea of having a backup QB. And then the off chance or the unfortunate circumstance that Jordan Love isn't who you think he is, you at least have another quarterback on your roster who maybe can do something. And I just think that because of the positive things we did see from Sean Clifford, I think it was mainly his fearlessness because he didn't look like he was nervous back there in the pocket. He was just slinging it. When he threw a pick, he came back, kept playing really hard. And that was one of the things the Packers mentioned when they did draft him. I was looking earlier today at a post-draft press conference by the Packers director of football operations, Milt Henderson. And this is what he said right after the Packers drafted Sean Clifford. He said this: Sean is a highly accomplished quarterback at Penn State. He's 31-14 as a starter. I think he brings a lot of experience to our room. I think he's an upgrade to our overall roster in that way. He also said kid's got some gamer to him. He also noted his intelligence. And then he said he's played in big games. That kid coming into the environment in Lambeau, it's not going to be too big for him. That experience factor, along with some of the moxie that he has as a guy, to me it's a culmination of who he is, not one specific aspect that way. So the Packers recognized that he was playing in big games his entire college career at Penn State. And he was a winner. 31-14, pretty solid record overall. And so to have a guy like that the Packers could bring in and try to develop and teach and coach up, like with quarterbacks coach Tom Clements, I think the Packers believe that he could at least be a solid backup for them in the future. And I think when you look at that game in Cincinnati, you sort of saw that he's been in those big game situations. Not that he played perfectly, as I already said, threw 2 interceptions, but he never looked like anxious and nervous back in the pocket. And I think when you look at Jordan Love early in his career, you could sort of see a little bit more hesitancy, but Sean Clifford just came out fearless right out the gate. And obviously, playing like that is not going to automatically make you an elite quarterback. I think, just sort of like guys like Brett Favre, it doesn't always work out for players who play in that type of mold. Guys like Taylor Heineke who have their good moments but haven't really been able to, stick around as, a starter in the league. And so my hope with Sean Clifford is that if he can start to, not always make those decisions where he had a pressure on the face in the pick six. If he instead would have, taken the sack or thrown the ball away, not throw that pick, obviously that's helpful. Also to the other pass Matt LaFleur mentioned, he didn't make the right read, even though LaFleur said that Tucker Kraft should have, tried to go and get it more. It's still, he wasn't placing the ball in the right place. And I just do wonder, can the Packers coach him up, and can he, still play as he does, fearless and willing to take risks, but not some of those risks where it's clearly not a good idea. Because if he can clean that up, I think he'd be a really solid quarterback, really solid backup. Starter in the league, I don't know. It's tough to tell sometimes in preseason just because, lots of times these quarterbacks coming in the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, they may look amazing, but lots of times they're playing against the second stringers and third stringers. And so we've seen lots of quarterbacks in the league come in preseason, play really well, and then disappoint in the season. So just because a quarterback has a good preseason doesn't necessarily mean that, they're going to be a solid starter in the NFL. But I think overall, I was excited from what I saw about Sean Clifford just because of the way he played. Besides those interceptions, he played really, really well. And honestly, all I could think of when watching him was this is fun. This is fun to watch a quarterback like that. It was always fun to watch Brett Favre when he would just run around like crazy and, throw it as he did. It's fun to watch that kind of quarterback, even though it is, slightly unnerving when, they're throwing picks and throwing into tight situations. But still, it's fun to watch a guy like Sean Clifford. So I'm 100% rooting for Clifford. Hopefully he can develop and become a very, very solid quarterback. And if the Packers ever do need to use him, if Love, ever misses a game for an injury, which hopefully he doesn't, but if he were to, I'm somewhat confident that a guy like Clifford could come in and maybe, keep the team somewhat afloat if he can sort of rein in those interceptions a little bit. And one other note, which I forgot to mention earlier, but I wrote in my Packers newsletter today, if you haven't subscribed, I'll leave a link in the description. I'm starting to write a little bit more over there. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers, so if you would like to follow or subscribe, you can enter your email in the link down below, comments or description. But I was looking at Sean Clifford's stats in college, and he honestly didn't have that big of a problem with interceptions. He had 86 touchdowns, 31 interceptions in his college career. In all 4 years starting, he never threw more than 9 interceptions, never reached the double-digit interception mark. And so he for every interception he threw, he also threw 2.77 touchdowns, which is pretty solid touchdown to interception ratio. So we'll see what he does in this next preseason game. I assume he'll get some more snaps. But hopefully he can be a solid backup here in Green Bay, and if he ever needs to play, we'll see if he can develop and become a better decision maker overall. But that's all I have for this video. I appreciate you guys for watching. If you want to stay up to date with all things Packers, that is what I cover on this channel. So feel free to subscribe. If you haven't subscribed to my Packers newsletter, feel free to click that link down below, enter your email to get more Packers thoughts. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter, just look up Luke Beller and you'll find me. But that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.